Thank you for joining us for today's Tennessee Department of Education's 2017-18 Pre-KK ELA Resource Guide webinar. This webinar has been pre-recorded for your convenience. Please email any follow-up questions or comments to portfolio.questions@tn.gov. My name is Keely Potter. I am the Director of Teacher Effectiveness for the Tennessee Department of Education, and we are very excited that you could join us today to take a closer look at the Pre-KK ELA Resource Guide. So the purpose of today's webinar is to review certain components within the Resource Guide. We will not cover all parts and will only take a little dive into each, and so again we encourage you to reach out with any questions after the webinar, and we'll be sure to follow up. So we are going to discuss the ELA introduction that's actually found inside the resource guide because it provides the rationale for the integrated combination options. We'll also see what the planning guide looks like and talk a little bit about how it can be helpful to long-term plan, backwards plan, with our colleagues to prepare for the best times to actually collect student work artifacts at point A and point B. We'll also look at a sample scoring guide. There are many scoring guides or rubrics within the resource, the ELA resource guide. This is being pre-recorded today. This webinar is pre-recorded, so some of the images that you see on the screens will actually be drafts, and so it's very important to make sure when thinking about a scoring guide or wanting more information, definitely download the versions on the team-tn.org website, the team website, for the most current visuals and artifacts and resources around the portfolio. We're also going to talk briefly about the sample tasks that are provided, what the purpose of the sample tasks really is, why are we providing it, and we're going to discuss how it's absolutely just a suggested task, and if there's a scaffold or support for teachers if needed, but teachers are most certainly encouraged to create their own tasks as well around the standards combination. So when we think about the portfolio, I know the audience listening to the webinar will have a wide range of knowledge around the portfolio. Some are very familiar and some are just learning about the portfolio. So we are going to just take a brief walk through some of the components and structures of the portfolio model. So the purpose of the portfolio is to provide pre-K and kindergarten teachers the opportunity to demonstrate the best growth in students of various proficiency levels through purposeful sampling. Along with the idea of the best growth, that also means we are determining those student work artifacts that represent a differentiated group sample in the best way. And so we'll talk more a little later about purposeful sampling and what that means. It's also to ensure that teachers are honored for implementing the revised Tennessee standards. The Tennessee standards promote higher reading comprehension and math proficiency, and so we're excited to see this as an opportunity for pre-KK teachers to deepen their content knowledge around the standards, and that we feel like this work and the work with the revised standards will most certainly be a support to teachers as they dive deeper into the revised standards. So the pre-K and the kindergarten portfolio collections have very similar types of collections. So in pre-K, there are 4 collections. 2 are ELA, one of those being literature narrative text and one being informational explanatory text, and being mindful that ELA will combine standards from across the foundational reading and writing domains. In math, there are 2 collections. Counting and cardinality is one, and geometry or measurement and data. So pre-K teachers will choose either geometry or measurement and data for a collection. Please also know that on May 30th, the math resource guide was uploaded to the team website under the portfolio section, as well as a math webinar with the same purpose of this ELA webinar, to walk through the actual resource guide. So I encourage you to also seek out those resources. The kindergarten portfolio component, very similar to pre-K, 4 total collections, 2 in ELA and 2 in math. In ELA, there's a literature narrative text collection and an informational explanatory text collection. And in math, there is not a choice on one of the collections like in pre-K. So either counting and cardinality, counting and cardinality for collection 1 and operations and algebraic thinking for collection 2. So as you can see in the resource guide, there are standards in math that can be chosen from one of these collections, and in ELA there are the standard combination options that can be chosen. The visual you see on your screen was shared often during the 2016-17 school year, especially in the early learning model training. It provides a glimpse at purposeful sampling. So as you notice towards the top of the visual, there are the clouds or the bubbles that say choose standard strand. And for ELA, that's combination options, and for math, that would be a standard collection. And so each one of those represents a collection. And you'll notice underneath, there's an emerging proficient advanced noted, and that really represents the idea of the differentiated group samples within a classroom. So when we think about our classroom and our diverse learners, we have those students who are meeting the target on a certain objective or lesson, those who are really working towards meeting the target, and those who have passed the target. And so that's named as Emerging Proficient Advanced in the portfolio. And the resource guide provides a lot of information around how to choose a student work through the purposeful sampling method. So we encourage you to read that, and the ELA guidance around the collections. And so, but to just briefly talk through it right now, you can see that each child represented here is representing student work. And underneath that visual, you see A, B, so it's representing a student work artifact within a differentiated group sample within a classroom at a point A and a point B. And being mindful that the student work that's chosen for each of those differentiated groups is really a representation of that particular differentiated group. And so teachers can be very mindful of which student growth artifacts represent that. So point A is the critical time to identify the differentiated group that student work artifact is placed in, and then when point B is collected, a teacher does analyze the growth that's occurred between each, and then they use the point A categorization or sorting and the identification of either emerging proficient advanced being the category for the point A. That is ultimately what drives which student work artifacts are submitted into each differentiated group sample. You also see teacher narrative underneath those collections, and through 2016-17 early learning model training, we use the term teacher narrative to describe any type of anecdotal note, observational note, description of student work that a teacher might create. And again, we will go into 17-18, also valuing that part. It's a very reflective piece of the portfolio, and you will see in the resource guide that there is some guidance around the teacher narrative, or a contextual form as well, being uploaded with student work. So that will still be a portion of the portfolio for 2017-18. So we definitely encourage you to read more about that in the resource guide, and certainly reach out if you have any questions. So again, why student growth portfolio model? On the screen, you see the heart, really the heartbeat of the portfolio. So it is teacher developed. We will continue to value and seek out the feedback from teachers as they begin the process of portfolio implementation. We often think of the portfolio scoring guides as almost live documents, because every year teacher feedback will continue to drive so many parts of the portfolio. And it's because of that, the professional learning and growth really occurs at enormous rates when a teacher is implementing the portfolio. It occurs in many ways. So when we think about teachers analyzing student work with colleagues, scoring student work, using that information to then inform their instruction and their differentiation, small group instruction for students. Student needs and strengths come forth from the student work. All of those pieces together, along with sharing it with our colleagues, really have enormous impact on professional learning and growth within teachers. And then you'll also see that the portfolio is flexible. There are options. Teachers can choose the standards that they wish to focus on within the collections or the standard combinations in ELA. Some districts have found success when PLCs or teacher groups make decisions together. Sometimes teachers make decisions alone. Sometimes districts help their teachers make those decisions. So again, it's flexible in that way as well. It is also peer reviewed, and more information will continue to come out through the year about the peer review process. I also encourage you to read in the resource guide about the peer review process, and there will be opportunity for portfolio teachers to seek out the opportunity to be a peer reviewer. All of these components together truly make the portfolio model, the student growth portfolio model, student-centered, and through the analysis of student work, guiding all instructional decisions that are made by teachers, our classrooms really truly do become student-centered. And when student work is at the center, many very strong instructional practices begin to occur in classrooms. So when student work is at the center, teacher-generated formative assessments just become almost a way of doing things, where teachers are very mindful of how they're measuring their instructional lessons, or how they are continuously encouraging students to also self-monitor and to set goals. Through a teacher paying close attention to the analysis of student work, it drives the differentiation. It drives small group instruction and individualized instruction. And when that happens, it's impossible for us not to reflect. So it absolutely builds reflection in teachers and students, because as teachers, the more that we share student work with students and celebrate the progress with students, the more mindful they are as well. And metacognitive practices begin to develop within students, and critical thinking about their own work and goal setting. And as we're doing that in our classrooms, as we're living that in our classrooms, knowing that this work fosters collaboration in PLCs and collaborative teacher groups is critical, because the more that we can think together, the more that we learn about the process. And again, the more that we also share this with students, it definitely connects to them and helping them to make their own goals and to self-monitor their growth along the way. The more that students do that, the more that they talk and share and think and problem solve together. And that can definitely come forth from this work. And through looking at the student work and analyzing it, of course, our teacher planning absolutely increases in depth and importance, especially when we're doing it with colleagues. And as our instructional plans improve, we're looking at student work, analyzing it. Certainly our content knowledge is deepening, especially when we deconstruct standards while we are planning, to make sure that we understand what the standard is asking students to show or demonstrate. And then again, going back to the idea that this really builds a student-centered classroom, it does, because through this work, we're constantly identifying and supporting students in their strengths and also in helping them move along the way with their areas of need. So in the portfolio model, there are 2 collection points. The message is most certainly that it should be an authentic collection of point A, and there's more information in the resource guide around that, but it's just the idea that when we long-term plan and we think about those times in the year that make the most sense to collect point A, those times that Again, this is not something else we're doing. It's something that's built into our instruction and the way we do things. So as part of a teacher's normal cycle of planning, instruction, and reflection, a variety of targeted learning objectives should be outlined for use throughout the year. So again, the importance of the initial long-term planning among teachers. And also, teachers collect the student growth evidence from the 2 points in time that are the most practical for the specific standards-based learning taking place. And then to be thoughtful in determining what evidence provides the clearest picture of the impact on student learning for multiple levels of students. Again, being mindful that in ELA, a writing artifact is required, and then the additional evidence can be professional decisions by teachers. And as I just said, the required evidence for pre-KK is the student writing artifact, but additional evidence can also be video segments that demonstrate student actions or talk. It could be photographs of student work, the audios of student talk. And as teachers collect work, we encourage you to find shared spaces, such as it could be Google Drive, or it could be other forums that you may use. The launch of the platform, the teacher registration, will be in early October. Portfolio practices, we encourage you to begin when school starts and really thinking about the structures in which teachers can collaboratively look at student work and analyze student work together. The portfolio is not the platform by all means. The platform is just a place to store those student work artifacts that teachers are considering for submission. So we certainly encourage you to explore ways to store the student work prior to that. So the pre-KK portfolio, as you can see from the scoring guides within the resource guide, they are 7-level rubrics. Level 6 and 7 are only there for those students who are identified at point A, typically at levels 4 and 5. So levels 6 and 7 show growth, whereas before, when we were just levels 1 to 5, it was very difficult to show growth in the advanced learners. And so when you look at those 7-level scoring guides or rubrics, please know that the intent is not to teach to the 6 or 7. It's not an achievement scoring guide or rubric when we look at it as identifying a level and knowing that we're going to be using it to identify growth between point A and point B. And also to know that the online platform will allow teachers the flexibility to upload multiple files, and there's a tagging element that is discussed in greater depth in the resource guide as well, so please read as much as you can about that. I do like to say that for me, tagging is very similar to some practices I used to do with my colleagues around student writing, and we would have different highlighters. And if we were scoring a piece of student work for word choice and organization, we might highlight the word choice, the strong words in pink, and we might highlight the transitional words that triggered organization. We might highlight those in yellow. That was tagging. If my colleague highlighted student work that I brought from my class, I could then look at what my colleague highlighted and see a reflection of my own instruction there. I'll absolutely see strengths and areas of needs within my students. I know sometimes when I score my own student work, it might look quite different than when my colleague scores it, because I might see more even there than what's really there, and sometimes my colleague can provide an objective lens. So the tagging process is also reflective, and when we think about the idea of a teacher narrative in the online platform, when a teacher tags student work evidence at that point where the student is demonstrating a standard, there's an option to add a description there as well, which again, narrative lives there too. It's any time that we are describing work, we are writing anecdotal notes or observational notes around student work. So the 2017-18 student growth indicator that you see here, there's more information in your resource guide around how it is used. But do note that the levels expectations are to the left and those descriptors are to the right, and this is not the scoring guide that's used to score student work. There are multiple scoring guides for that. especially in ELA, knowing that a foundational, a reading, and a writing scoring guide are part of an analytical rubric for each ELA collection. Again, just a reminder that the portfolio model is the growth measure for 35%, and qualitative observational data is still 50%, and the achievement measure is 15%. So as we dive into the actual pre-KK portfolio and some more specifics around the process, what you see on your screen here is also in the resource guide, and we highly encourage you to read and reread some of these parts and some of these pieces. This walks you through many of the things we've talked about today, that the portfolio process is really a genuine, authentic cycle of instruction where teachers plan, instruct, collect student work, analyze, differentiate as a result. The cycle begins again, and it's critical to look at the portfolio process through that lens, because it's certainly not one more thing. It should absolutely be integrated into that instructional cycle that occurs in classrooms. So we're going to talk briefly about the integration of foundational reading and writing standards. So to meet or exceed Tennessee's goal that at least 75% of third graders will be reading on grade level by 2025, it's critical to provide daily opportunities for all students to build skills-based competencies by discovering the connections between reading, writing, and foundational skills. We can do that by engaging in a high volume of reading, reading and listening to complex texts that are on or beyond grade level, by thinking deeply about and responding to text through speaking and writing, by developing the skill and craft of a writer, and by practicing foundational skills that have been taught explicitly and systematically and applied through reading and writing. So why integration? Well, reading and writing are the most authentic measures of the application of foundational skills. So with a student work artifact, we're going to look at it through three different lenses. One lens being foundational, which is looking at features of print in pre-K and encoding in kindergarten. Look at it through the reading standard lens, means we're looking at a student work artifact through the comprehension lens. And then the writing standard, you'll notice in the scoring guide, focuses on focus and ideas within writing. And so when we have those glasses on, we're looking at a student work artifact through the writing lens. So what is writing in the early grades? Writing in the early grades, when we speak of that in the portfolio, is not a direct instruction of writing in pre-K. It's absolutely developmental and built into print-rich classrooms. So we know that our earliest learners respond to hands-on experiences, and that can include the art of writing. Our environments, when they encourage thinking, speaking, and writing, reading, and problem solving, in those environments, students begin to mimic or look around and see what's around them, and they begin to really engage with what they see in the classroom and what they're experiencing, what those experiences are. And so as that is occurring, then the emotional, social, and academic development of children is really at the center. And so even thinking about block play and knowing that when students have built something with blocks, and let's say they built a castle with a bridge, and you'll notice children begin to pick up paper and make signs. They begin to really show an application of what they're experiencing in their own world. And we want to be really mindful of the opportunities we're providing our earliest learners in our classrooms to explore in such a way, because it is so developmental. So print-rich environments play a very large part of growing our earliest learners to love to read and to write and to think. So print-rich environments encourage students to replicate or mimic the print that they see around them within their own drawing and writing, and of course that's referred to as emergent writing. When children begin to draw or write what they notice about writing, such as parts of names, non-letter-like or letter-like forms. It might be mixed with some letters or squiggles. That's demonstrating emergent writing, and often as a result of the print-rich environment around them. And from pretend writing, we can tell a great deal about growing knowledge and interest in written language by observing how they use the space to create forms on the page. So from their attempts, we can observe that they are beginning to distinguish between pictures and print. So it is for this reason that the Pre-K Foundational Standard, RFPK1, is the foundational standard measured within each Pre-K ELA collection, because it demonstrates the application of the reading foundational standards that are taught in Tennessee's Pre-K classroom. So now let's think about kindergarten students and encoding and decoding. So the kindergarten foundational standard of knowing and applying grade level phonics and word analysis skills when encoding words is the application of the reading foundational standards that are taught in kindergarten classrooms. So through students' writing pieces, teachers are able to see a reflection of their instruction and the strengths and areas of need that exist in beginning readers and writers. So a kindergarten student's ability to encode, which is using letter and sound knowledge to write, reflects their progression in decoding, which is reading words and text. The development of encoding and decoding exists in a parallel state for most learners. So in the portfolio resource guide, we have provided some task samples. These are not required to be used with the ELA combinations, and we'll certainly encourage teachers to create their own as well. But what you'll notice on the ones we provided is there's a task description that goes along with a standard combination option. And then there is a portfolio vignette that is structured in the same way for each one, where it encourages teachers to think about the text. It walks through what it might look like and sound like to provide students with the expectations of the task. It actually takes a little tiny dive into the interactive read aloud, strategic think aloud, stopping places examples, and then also what teacher scaffolding and support would look like through modeled or interactive or shared writing, and also provides what additional prompting and support would look like. And also be mindful that on the scoring guides for the ELA combination, whenever you see with little prompting or support, or with prompting and support, each level of performance on the scoring guide also has a varying degree of the descriptor, so it's not just reliant on prompting and support to be the distinguishing factor, but we do feel like it's very important, especially in your sorting of point A, to be mindful of which students had limited prompting and support, which had none, and which had what you would feel like was just your own target prompting and support. So we've provided some questions in the task to support that. So again, this is a draft. It will look different in the final, but those parts I just walked you through. The expectations of the task is a script that teachers can use for the actual task, and it brings to light just some important things to remember about interactive read aloud and possible places to stop in the read aloud. And through all of this, we highly encourage teachers to read and study the Tennessee Literacy document. The resource guide has a link to that document, and so all of the practices that are shared in the vignette here can also be found in more detail in the Tennessee Literacy document. So again, on this screen, you see what the teacher scaffolding and support portion may look like. And then at the bottom, there are some questions that can be asked for those students who need additional prompting and support, which can also assist in the sorting. Each task sample also has a duration part that's provided where teachers can think about the time of year, the materials that are needed, and how long the task will actually last. There's also planning guides that are in your resource guide, where, especially for PLCs or partnerships, teachers can long-term plan and use this as an organizer. Most certainly create your own organizers as well, and this might certainly have to be, might be much greater in length than what you see here on the screen. But it's the idea that teachers are really making deliberate decisions around when they will be collecting point A and point B in certain collections. So what you see here, as far as the scoring guide sample, they're all organized this way, where the box at the top basically provides the 3 standards within the combination. The level 3 measurement criteria is actually the on-grade level criteria. So level 3 is always what it would look like at grade level. And then, of course, your source or evidence is provided there. And then below, you actually see the descriptors. So the only thing that changes in the collections is the reading standard and the writing standard according to genre. So the foundational ones will stay, the foundational standard scoring guide will stay the same in each collection. So again, we want to close today with thinking again about the importance of the collaborative practices to support portfolio work, knowing that deconstructing standards to deepen content knowledge is really always the first step, which leads to the informed short and long-term planning. And then knowing that as part of that process, the ongoing analysis of student work to inform differentiation is critical. And it happens at such higher depths of knowledge when we can have collaborative conversations that really lead us to self-reflection. And when that happens, student work is then at the center of instructional practices. And then student conversations, student work conversations between teachers and principals and instructional coaches and other educators really becomes a regular, consistent conversation. And through that, as our professional content knowledge grows, our professional learning is at the forefront, then we most certainly all develop as teacher leaders. So thinking about next steps, we encourage you to dive into the resources of the ELA resource guide, the actual general portfolio guidebook for administrators and teachers, as well as the math resource guide. All of those can be found on the team website under portfolios. We will continue to provide supports and staff for the process, so please check back to the team website often and consider subscribing to the team update. We will continue to communicate resources we have around the portfolio through the team update. So again, you can reach out to portfolio questions at tn.gov or my email, keelypotter@tn.gov. Also, Darlene Estes-Del Rey, the Director of Professional Development, who is a huge part of our ELM training, who is a pre-K expert. You may also reach out to her. And again, we thank you for your time today, and we're looking forward to the continued journey.